So now we have Unit 9, Democratic Governance. So studying this unit last from the political science syllabus is actually quite effective, although it's Unit 9. If you have covered the other units, this unit is going to be something more things that you are already aware of. That's why this unit is going to be easy for you. The ones who have taken part in my course of political science from the beginning, and the ones who did not skip classes, the ones who did do the papers, the ones who actually paid attention and concentrated in classes, who understood the previous units, this is going to be a cakewalk for you all. Okay. So excluding like the couple of notes that you have in the beginning where we discuss so much about the trajectory of democracy and all that, there's nothing much new. Everything you will be already aware of, right? So we are going to study about the introduction to democracy, then the conceptual foundation. These two will be the area that you will come across a lot of historical stuff. Other than that, there's nothing much new here, right? Characteristics that you all already know. Then we are looking at what sort of an experience Sri Lanka has in terms of democracy, right? So starting things off, like first of all, democracy was there like the modern idea of democracy, the democratic governance. It was started off in the 17th century with the nation state. You know, you guys remember how the modern territorial state was started, and in the territorial state, in the beginning, you had the authoritative state, which wasn't rainbows and sunshines as people expected. So they did all these revolutions to establish democratic governance, hence created the modern day of modern nation state, the system we have at the moment, right? So this idea of liberal democracy was evolved. So democracy tallied tallied well with liberalism. So those two started growing together as liberal democracy. Okay, although the idea of democracy came all the way from ancient Greece, and the idea of liberalism came with like John Locke's opinions and all that, views and all that, and those two paired together in order to create liberal democracy, right? So in modern day context, like countries like Switzerland and all, they are identified as 5-star democracies because they have like a superb democratic status. Okay, when we look at the conceptual foundation, now now this note that says conceptual foundation of democratic governance, I am talking to the ones who are general overthinkers here. If there are any student in this class who are like overthinkers in general, right? This, you see, this is a lesson that you should not overthink about, right? Don't try to like break it down so much. Then you are going to be confused as to what is the difference between liberal democracy and representative democracy. Okay, these two are not two types. It's just looking at democracy from two different perspectives. Okay, it's liberal democracy and representative democracy means like a smart student and a talented student. What is the difference between a smart student and it's like a smart student and a hardworking student, or a smart student or a disciplined student. Like let's say you take a school, some be like, okay, there are two good things about a good student in a school. Either you can be a smart student or you can be a disciplined student. Like what is the difference? Then you can't think, okay, if you are not studying, how can that make you like non-disciplined? If you are doing non-disciplinary stuff, how can that make you like a non-smart person? Like there's no connection there. It just both interpretations, we are looking at how a student can do well in school. It's just two perspectives, right? You can be a disciplined student, that is something that is appreciated in school, and you can be a smart student, that is also something that is appreciated in school, right? You can be both at once, but it's just two different ways of determining how good a student is, how disciplined the child is, how smart the child is. Here also, liberal democracy, representative democracy, both are like two ways of looking at democracy. Liberal democracy is about like people being free, the whole idea of liberty, right? Representative democracy is about looking at the representative aspect of it, whether the government is handled by our people, Because Greece used to have like direct democracy. Now that is not possible because we can't govern ourselves. We have chosen representatives to do that job for us. Representative democracy is talking about that aspect. It's not talking about liberty. It's talking about like us being governed by ourselves through our representatives. Liberal democracy is like looking at the liberty aspect of it, freedom aspect of it. So both are equally appreciated. It's just two ways of looking at democracy, appreciating two sides of democracy. Okay, unless that you really try to connect these two or like identify differences, no, that's not how it works. Just this is not like two categories or like two steps or whatever. No, this is just two aspects of looking at democracy, two different ways. Okay, so as I mentioned, liberal aspect talks about, now you see, personal freedom, private property to freedom, open market, political competition. So it's about people being free. Okay, then you have the representative democracy. That is where we are looking at like these aspects about on voting and all that, right? Understand? That's a difference. Then after that, we can identify these things as liberal democratic governments, like essential conditions, constitutionalism, individual freedom, and all that. These elements, okay? A lot of elements are given. Then we are looking at the historical trajectory, how the British rulers sort of like had the British monarchs going on, and how John Locke and the people came sort of like wanting to create more liberty for people, right? And how that sort of like got along with the idea of democracy, and how liberal democracy started taking on. Okay, there's a lot of content. And then the idea of representative democracy is about, you can see that how direct democracy turn into representative democracy. Okay, I think it should make sense to you. Now here, liberal democracy is talking about the whole John Locke aspect of democracy. Understand? Liberal democracy is talking about the connection between liberalism and democracy. What John Locke said, what sort of features should be there to protect your liberty, and all that. Representative democracy is talking about the Greek aspect of democracy, how people used to govern people and how we currently do that. Understand? Right? Anyways, will be able to pick it up, right? Let's read and see. After the historical trajectory is over, we will be moving on to main features, and from that point onwards, it's going to be much easier than this, right? Okay, let's get someone to read. Ramona, can you read introduction?
Okay. Introduction to democracy. Modern democratic governance has a recently short history as it began initially emerged in Great Britain during the late 17th century as an alternative political theory against the monarchical autocratic rule. This concept was later spread throughout Europe as well as to America. This British concept of liberal democracy was further developed with the theory of representative democracy, which was based on the idea of popular government. The basic idea of democracy was allowing citizens to govern themselves, which was the political system in ancient Greece. Representative democracy is the modern-day application of this idea, which allows citizens to govern themselves through the public representatives. However, modern democratic governance includes many steps in addition to representative democracy, such as constitutionalism, people's sovereignty, separation of power, checks and balances, rule of law, human rights, limited government, free and fair elections, accountability, etc. Based on these features, the democratic status of a country can be measured. Accordingly, certain countries in the world, such as Switzerland, are identified as the countries with the best democracy. It is important to study which of these features fit into the Sri Lankan political system and how to improve the democratic status of Sri Lanka.
Okay, thanks, Ramana. Now you can see that we are looking at the whole idea of like it was a British concept, right? Like they started talking about democracy, John Locke, and all that. And these are the main features that we are looking at: constitutionalism, people's sovereignty, separation of power, checks and balances, rule of law. We will be discussing about each one of these at a latter part of this unit. Okay, and what we are going to study is how democracy, liberal democracy, has been so effective in countries like Switzerland, and how what is the status of Sri Lanka at the moment in terms of democracy, and how should we improve what's going on. Okay, so the conceptual foundation, I'll read that part for you, right? Democracy is not a solitary concept, rather a collection of concepts. It can be interpreted as a political philosophy, political theory, a political ideology, and a format of governance. Now, this format of governance part is where representative democracy comes in, right? The political philosophy part is where liberal democracy comes in, right? It's about, it's a philosophy or it's an ideology or a theory. Liberalism, people being free. Then when you take the technical aspect of it, how people govern themselves, that's where representative democracy comes in, okay? So it can be defined as a specific phase of the state. You know, when liberalism has, what sort of phase does the state have? Democracy is a political and social use of culture. Other than this, democracy is a set of values which forms the social life and social relationships. When our behavior inside family, school, office, factory, of university, bus is formed by democratic values, it can be considered as a strong piece of evidence that we have reached a higher level of human civilization. Do you know that in some countries that, you know, when you if you drop your wallet somewhere, there are some countries that they will come and return that wallet to you, isn't it? There are some countries that you drop your wallet for a second, or you have the wallet in your pocket and it goes missing. Okay, there are countries a lady can alone walk at 12 in the night, nothing happens. But there are areas that, you know, even at 12 in the afternoon, you can't just walk in a road alone. Why do people behave bad? That shows where, in which level of civilization you are. That comes with democratic values, right? Democracy is not always about the state allowing us freedom. It's about us, how humans allow freedom to each other, right? It's about people giving freedom to each other. All right. So that shows in our behavior in family, school, office, wherever. With that, you can determine what sort of a level of civilization we are in, given the democratic values, democratic status of your country is like a measurement. It's like a yardstick that you can measure where your civilization stands. Okay. So the two conceptual democracies, conceptual foundations, one is liberal democracy. As I told you, we are looking at the liberal aspect of it, the freedom and all that, the ideological side. Then representative democracy, we are looking at the election side of it, like having elections, and the technical side of it, how we govern ourselves. Okay. Right. So first, clarify the liberal democracy part. Shastra, can you read?
Yes, sir. Liberal democracy. Liberalism was developed as a concept and a form of governance in Europe following the fall of feudalism. Liberalism basically rejected autocratic features of feudalism. The main purpose of liberalism was to ensure rights and freedom of citizens by excluding the personal life and economic activities of citizens from the state. The initial concept of liberalism emphasized personal freedom, private property freedom, open market political competition as main features. Therefore, liberalism pointed out the societies consisted of people, and in order to make the society a better place, it is necessary to ensure the personal freedom of each citizen. Liberal social freedom. This is related to the rise of the liberal capitalistic state in Europe. The European business class preferred the capitalistic liberal system over economic and social activities without state involvement. Therefore, the liberal theory is connected with the desires and motives of the rich class. The features of liberalism are formed in a way to facilitate the existence of the rich class. Take democracy. Democratic values were initiated following the social, economic, and political transformation in the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe. Democracy is a governance format, or else election of fundamentals and proper governance. The democratic status of a country is determined on these democratic values. Democracy also can be defined as a social and philosophical concept other than a government form. It represents an idea about how people should live in a society. Democracy was developed as a way of life, as an alternative system against the social and personal pressure in the feudalist system. Hence, democracy means a society where rights and liberty are protected. It can be studied the liberal democracy as the social related aspect of democracy, as pointed out by Andrew Haywood in 1994 in his book Political Ideas and Concepts. Democracy is not only a form of government, but also a concept of life. It was developed as a form of government as a replacement for the autocratic monarchy. It was developed as a concept of life as a replacement for the feudalistic oppression over social and personal life. Liberal democracy is basically a combination of liberalism and democracy. For this combination, democracy has contributed from the aspects of democracy as a concept of life. This combination took place during the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe. The basic idea of the word liberal in political science is that being free from the control and the involvement of the government. The basic meaning of democracy is the government representing the people's will. Therefore, liberal democracy can be identified as a government based on the will of the public and the lives of the people, being free from the control and the involvement of the government. Individual freedom is a core principle of liberal democracy. When a liberal democratic government is studied, following essential conditions can be found. Constitutionalism, individual freedom, protected fundamental rights, political and economic capabilities, checks and balances, free and independent media, will of the public, free and fair elections, universal franchise, responsible and accountable governance, limited governance, competitive political party system, independence of judiciary, protection of minorities, rule of law. Differentiation of public and private fields, acceptance of political pluralism. Above mentioned conditions are necessary for a liberal democratic government. These conditions control the unnecessary involvement of state as well as ensure individual freedom and rights. According to some political thinkers, liberal democracy is the only practical and meaningful interpretation of democracy. Also, in the modern day, most dominating theory of identifying democracy, also liberal democracy. However, it is also important to remember that liberal democracy is only a specific stream of democracy rather than being the only interpretation of democracy.
Right. So you see what this liberal democratic interpretation is about, right? So it's about defining what does it mean when you say you live in a liberal country? What sort of a freedom do you have? What sort of rights do you have? That's what we are looking at, right? It's not about how democracy is practically put into action. It's about what sort of a society does liberal democracy creates. What sort of a society democracy creates? That's what we are looking at. Okay, the whole voting and choosing a government and us having sovereignty, then giving them the sovereignty and elections and that part, that practical part, it goes, the technical side goes with representative democracy. Okay, so we can see that it is a definition that been explained quite a lot by several political scientists. Now you can see this Political Ideas and Concepts, a book by Andrew Haywood written in 1994. Even at a very recent time that he has defined what this liberal democracy is, right? So then if you're having a liberal democratic government, these kind of features, if you are living in a liberal democratic society rather than a government, if you live in a liberal democratic society, these are the things that you should get: constitutionalism, individual freedom, fundamental rights, right? The long list of things. Okay. And then we are moving on to the historical trajectory to see how liberal democracy was developed. Before that, does anyone have any questions? Did you all understand all these 17 points? I'm assuming that you all understand these points because we have covered all this in other units. Now you see why it is important to do this unit last, right? If I did this as a 9th unit, like most of these won't make sense to you. Okay. Right. You all have time if you all want to ask any question, any term that you don't understand, I can break it down to you. No questions, no problems. All right. So let's take a look at the historical trajectory. How did democracy develop? How did democracy come to this point? Shastra, can you, if you can read this part also for us?
Historical trajectory of democracy. In many modern liberal democratic countries, liberal teachers were introduced even before fully transforming into democratic countries. For example, by the 19th century, many Western countries had already reached constitutional governance guided by liberal principles. However, universal franchise guided by democratic principles were not incorporated until late years. Most of these countries followed the concept of constitutional governance, yet the democratic principles of every person being able to vote came much later. Example, Great Britain introduced universal franchise by 1928 as a result of movement led by the labor class and feminism. The USA completed universal by 1966. Women were allowed in 1918 and minority were allowed in 1969. In Switzerland, women had voting rights since 1961. In Ceylon, liberal features such as legislative council, executive council, limited franchise were incorporated since 1833 from time to time. Democratic features such as universal franchise, political parties, etc. came after 1931, after Donoma reforms. In the modern world, all liberal democratic governments had the twin principles of representative democracy and limited government. However, different countries seem to have different applications of the principles. For example, in the US, liberalism is prioritized over democracy, whereas in Great Britain, democracy is prioritized over liberalism. At the time, due to the problem of global terrorism, the main parties of the war against terrorism, which are USA and European countries, have prioritized national security. As a result, both liberal and democratic features have suffered a reasonable setback since national security is given prominence over individual freedom. These countries follow new laws tightening the security of the country while restricting fundamental rights and liberties of citizens, etc. In the USA, following the September 11 terrorist attacks on New York, World Trade Center, and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., the US government passed the Patriot Act to ensure the national security of the country, which heavily restricted the Bill of Rights. It is also important to closely study the relationship between capitalism and liberalism. In fact, liberalism has an extremely close relationship with the capitalist economic system. Liberal democracy can be identified as the political face of capitalism. However, economic and social inequalities can be considered as an inevitable feature in capitalistic societies. Since liberal democracy does not provide any remedy or solution of these economic and social inequalities, this has been a major criticism of liberal democracy. In the mid-20th, liberalism changed its nature into the welfare state, which was an attempt to address these social and economic problems. The main objective of social welfare policies was to redistribute among economically poor and poor social classes through government intervention in order to provide areas for poor people to basic life standards. This was basically done by taxing the rich social layers and earning profit through governmental involvements. Those collected funds were utilized to provide essential services such as food, health, education, housing, transportation, etc., as welfare services for the poor layers of the society. However, following the failure of welfare states, New liberalism provided the replacement of minimal state in the 1980s. This was initiated in the United States and Great Britain, which was adopted by many other countries. Therefore, the old liberal argument that the market forces can ensure effective distribution of wealth among all social classes with minimum government intervention is generally accepted again in most of the liberal democratic countries in the world.
Right, okay. Thanks, Shaswat. Now you can see the idea of liberalism has been there. It has gone through a lot of ups and downs. As you can see, first of all, the monarchies existed. After that, liberalism came. People were given rights, right? And after that, in certain countries, that's not how it worked. Like, although universal franchise was given until 1928, women couldn't vote, right? And then in the USA until 1966, the minorities weren't allowed to vote, right? After 1969, only the minorities were allowed to vote, like Black people and Latinos and all that. So after 1961, only in Switzerland also women had voting rights. And how Sri Lanka, Ceylon was introduced all these features one by one. So we can see that every country in the world has taken like a slow and steady journey towards this liberal democracy to allow their people more and more rights and more freedoms. Okay, but then we see like with things like terrorism coming up, like Al Qaeda and ISIS and all that, like them sort of like posing a threat. Because of that, these extremely democratic countries like European countries and USA, they've sort of been a little heavy on freedom, because they feel like giving too much freedom could threaten their security. So as a result of that, they have sort of compromised liberal and democratic values over liberalism and democracy both. Another important thing in that note that we noticed was that how USA prioritizes being liberal and how Britain prioritizes being democratic. Now you remember we studied liberalism and republicanism. This is something like that. In the USA, the liberalism is their main thing. Like, they don't even care if people don't show up to vote to choose their government. They're like, okay, we are having an election. Whoever wants to come, just come and vote. But we want you all to be free. If you all feel like, not voting, we are not going to bother you. That's their attitude. But in Britain, that's not the case. Like, not liberalism is not prioritized. Democracy is prioritized. Like, it's very important for people to come and vote, and the parliament is given all the powers, parliament sovereignty, because parliament is the government, right? Government is given prominence. And that's what that means. Okay. Right, then which we are moving on to the representative democracy side. And if you're feeling like this lesson is a little boring, you understandable for you to feel that way, because these are a little sketchy, the earlier part, right? This unit only gets a little interesting, and like it picks up the pace after the next lesson under this unit. Okay, right. Anyways, representative democracy means that we are looking at the technical side, choosing your government, right? Because the word democracy was originated from, if you remember, right, from two Greek words, two Latin words, come from those Greek days. One is demos, the other one is korotas. That means people power. People being empowered of a country. People being able to choose their people being able to govern themselves. So in ancient Greece, that's literally what they did. They governed themselves. And now it's not possible anymore. Why? Because populations are higher and it's a little inconvenient to do that. So because of that, currently what we have is representative democracy. That means that we choose our government instead of like instead of governing ourselves, we have chosen a government. Okay, we can't go and make the decisions. So we appointed 225 people to the parliament saying, you guys make the decisions, right? That's what you call representative democracy. That's why we have something called a government, and we choose the representatives. Okay, so we are looking at elections here, governments, executives, legislatures, judiciaries. That's what we are looking at when it comes to representative democracy. So now that direct democracy is not possible, we are following the electoral elections, like electoral methods. So, and however, you need to keep in mind that Currently, this is not possible because of like several reasons. Modern nation states are geographically large, right? Population is higher. Okay, so you can't get 23 million of people into one place and get to make Sri Lankan laws. In ancient Greece, yes, because like maybe Athens had like what 4,000, 5,000 people. Out of that, also citizenship was given to like what 300, 400 people. They could get come together to one citizen council and make their decisions. That was possible. But now in Sri Lanka, we have 23 million people in a state. So can every citizen in Sri Lanka can come to one place and make laws? That's not possible. Which is why we are not practicing direct democracy anymore. Right? So what we've done is, since 23 million people can't come to one place, we've chosen 225 people. You guys, these 225 people, you all represent all of us. And you all should be making laws for us. Now, because Gotabaya Rajapaksa can't be coming to us all the time and asking us all the time, guys, is it okay if I do this? Can't do that all the time, right? So what we do is that we appointed 225 people saying, okay, Gotabaya, you can't be asking us, ask these guys, they represent us. Okay. But just practically think and tell me what is more transparent. Isn't people making their own laws is much more powerful than choosing a representative? How do we know whether these representatives really would represent us? Do they? Tell me that. There are 225 people in the parliament. Who's there to represent us? Do they represent us really? Like we have this COVID pandemic going on. Do you think any of those people care about like people dying here? No, right? They are just, they are there to get their work done. So direct democracy is always better than indirect democracy. It is better if we could have made our own laws rather than depending on these politicians, right? But it is not practical. That's a problem. It's not practical. Okay. But since it is good, direct democracy, we still make sure that we follow direct democracy in the possible ways that we can. Right? So we try different things to still apply direct democracy, and we have a name for that. What is that name? Anyone? The person who texted me, you texted a specific type. I'm asking the general name for all of them. Nobody? The name is direct democracy methods. Yeah, I received 2 answers from 2 people. Like you all have mentioned a specific direct democracy method. You all have mentioned referendums. That's a specific direct democracy method, right? Referendums are a direct democracy method. So in general, we call them direct democracy methods because direct democracy existed back then. And up to date, we still have certain methods that we still apply direct democracy. Those are called direct democracy methods. And there are like around 3-4 direct democracy methods in the world. Referendum is the most common one. Okay. Right. As you can see, I have given 4 in this list: referendums, initiative, recall, plebiscite. Okay. Right. Then I left some space for you to explain how direct democracy methods work. But we'll read this part 10. We'll have an understanding about how representative democracy works. Okay. Right. Tasha, can you read? Are you fit enough to read now?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay.
Representative democracy, similar to liberal democracy, representative democracy also has a reasonably short history. This was initially established in the mid-17th century in Europe and most notably Great Britain. In the simplest terms, democracy stands for the rule of people. In the initial stages of democracy in ancient Greece, it functioned as direct democracy where citizens govern themselves. However, due to the large population large territory and complex public matters, implementation of direct democracy is not practical. Therefore, by 17th and 18th centuries, representative democracy was established as a system where citizens were allowed to choose representatives to govern themselves. This was initiated in Great Britain as an alternative option against the monarchical rule of the Briton king. The basic idea of this concept meant that the sovereignty lies with the people and not with the king. This idea was supported by the social contract theory by John Locke, which suggested that the ruler and the people are parties of a contract, which makes the ruler responsible to the public. Therefore, according to this idea, people had power to remove the rulers who violates the above contract. This explains the basic foundation of representative democracy, which was developed in 17th and 18th centuries in Europe and America. The democracy which existed before representative democracy was the direct democracy system that existed in ancient Greece. The basic idea of this concept meant that the sovereignty lies with people and not with the king. This idea was supported by the social contract theory by John Locke, which suggested that the ruler and the people are parties of a contract, which makes the ruler responsible to the public. Therefore, according to this idea, people had the power to remove the rulers who violates the above contract. This explains the basic foundation of representative democracy, which was developed in 17th and 18th centuries in Europe and America. The democratic system, while existed before representative democracy, was the direct democracy system that existed in ancient Greece. The basic idea of direct democracy is allowing every citizen to take part in governance. This system was successfully implemented in Greek city-states for two reasons. One, smaller population and limited citizenship. Two, geographical small city-states. The citizenship in Greek city-states was given to a limited number of chosen people. Therefore, women, slaves, foreigners, merchants, and children did not receive citizenship. Under direct democracy, there was no difference between the ruled and ruled. Therefore, citizens gathered at a public place to pass laws, implement laws, and serve justice. Therefore, no difference existed between the government and the citizen. The governmental power was held by the people themselves. Since it is not possible to follow the system in modern states, representative democracy is applied as an alternative system. Since it is not possible to allow people to handle governmental power themselves, people are allowed to choose the holders of governmental power in this system. When we study direct democracy and representative democracy, it can be examined that these two concepts have drastic differences. In direct democracy, governance is directly handled by people themselves, while in representative democracy allows people to choose the government that handled the governmental power. There were several reasons behind this transformation. One, modern nations being geographically much larger. Two, population and the number of citizens being much larger. Three, the complexity of social problems and human desires. Due to these reasons, people engage in governance indirectly. Therefore, passing and implementation of laws is done by the government, and the government is appointed by the people. The participation of the citizens is allowed by elections, where citizens get to vote and choose their government. However, since direct democracy is such a bold political feature, modern political system use several methods to apply direct democracy to a certain extent. These methods are known as direct democracy methods, such as referendums, initiative, recall, and plebiscite.
Thanks, Tasha. If you have the printed version of this note, you can utilize these next 2 pages. I've left some space to jot down a small explanation of what these 4 mean. Okay. If you don't have the printed version, you can write it down by hand in a different paper. Okay. So I'll just explain, you guys jot down the points. Okay, rather than giving a word-to-word note, that would be more successful. First of all, referendum. What is a referendum? What is the definition of a referendum? A referendum is, this of course you have to write word to word, this is a definition. A referendum is a government, write down the exact words I tell you, because each word is a keyword. Referendum is when the government seeks the approval of the public for a decision. A referendum is when the government seeks the approval of the public for a decision. Okay, what does that mean? The government has made a decision and the decision has to be approved now. So normally when you say the government who makes a decision, government, the executive makes a decision, right? So normally who approves the decision of the government? The legislature, right? The legislature makes that decision. Sorry, legislature approves that decision. So in a referendum, what happens is, instead of going to the legislature, the executive comes directly to the public. Okay, so when Gotabaya makes a decision as the executive, right? Why does he have to get it approved in the legislature? What does it represent? Okay, Gotabaya made a decision and the parliament approved it, legislature approved it. What does that mean? Parliament is consisted of 225 representatives that we sent. 23 million Sri Lankans sent those 225 people to sit in the parliament. That means them saying yes to Gotabaya's decision is equal to us saying yes to Gotabaya's decision, right? We have our jobs. We can't be listening to Gotabaya every day and giving him approval to decisions. And there's no practical way for him to reach out to us every day to ask, Gotabaya will be calling you and Machang, I'll be doing this. Are you okay? Like, that's not possible. He can't be calling 23 million people, right? Which is why we have chosen, okay, look, we have our jobs. It's impossible for you to reach us, understand. We have chosen these 225 people. That 225 people means all 23 million people in the country. Them saying yes means us saying yes, right? Okay. Now let's give another example. Now this class has 18 people. That means like 17 students, right? This class has 17 students, excluding myself. So imagine that I have decided to sort of like have a physical class somewhere, right? I've decided to have a physical class. But let's say that it's at like a very remote location and it's like a very odd hour at about like 1 in the morning. So most of you all will find it difficult to come. So I will be getting one person to come and sit. Okay. So I will tell you guys, okay, you know what? I'm doing this class. Why don't you guys send someone? So I'll be like, okay, we'll send Rashid. So you guys will send Rashid to that class. That Rashid represents all 16 of you. So in that class, if I ask, okay, shall I give you guys an exam next week? Rashid saying yes, they are. Represents all 17 people saying yes. Because he represents all of you all. So me asking, shall we do an MCQ paper? Shall we do an essay paper? Now imagine I can't reach out to all of you all. So you all have appointed Rashid as your representative. So I'll be contacting him in that class. And him in that class represents all of you all when he gives me a word. But there can be certain things that are too important decisions. Imagine that at one point I feel like, okay, I have completed all the syllabus. I feel like I don't have to do any more theory classes, right? So shall we stop classes? Shall I stop doing political classes and let you all do studies on your own? Right? Now that is too big of a decision. And I'm not going to be like, take Rashid's word and be like, Rashid said, okay, sir, you can stop classes and we will go and study on our own. Rashid saying that I won't take that as, okay, you know what? He said that means everyone's okay with it. No. Giving a paper, should I give an MCQ or an essay paper? That, of course, I can't be bothering all of you all. I'd rather ask from one person, take that as a representation of everyone. But when it comes to something very extremely important, like, you know, should we continue with classes when the syllabus are over? Should we stop classes? That kind of thing that I need to reach out to all of you all. So apply the same principle there. There can be something like, you know, something like putting a curfew or like increasing the price of sugar, whatever, right? Those things the government can't be asking us all the time. But if they want to turn Sri Lanka into a federal country, if they want to change the national flag, right? If they want to withdraw from the UN, those things are huge decisions, and just taking the word of those 225 people is not enough. In that case, president should come to us and ask us. Now, that's what happens in a referendum. The government seeks the approval of the people instead of the legislature. Approval of the people. How does a referendum work? Similar to an election, just like an election, right? So you will get your Gram Niladhari will give you that card with your name on it. And on the day of the referendum, you can walk out to the polling center with your voting card and your ID, right? And they will check it, confirm your identity. Then they will color your finger, right? Pinky finger, and they will give you a ballot paper. And you have to mark the ballot paper and put it to the box. The only difference is it won't have names of political parties. Neither any of these political logos like the port tour or telephone or the elephant, none of them that will be there. No political logos, no political parties, no names. Mahinda, Sajid, Gotabaya, none of that is there. Okay. Then what is there in that ballot paper? There are only two options, yes or no. Yes or no. Do you agree with that government decision? Do you not agree with that government decision? That's it. And after everyone casts their vote, the government will count, right? And then just finish things off. The government, if the people said okay, you can go ahead with that. If the people said like, no, you don't go ahead with that, understand? So referendum, that's how referendum work. Okay. Then I'll take the fourth one, plebiscite. What does a plebiscite mean? A plebiscite means it's very similar to referendum, but there are differences. If you write the definition, you will understand again. Plebiscite means the government seeking the opinion of the people. What is the difference there? Referendum seeks for the approval, while plebiscite seeks for the opinion of the people. So what's the difference? The government is bound to follow whatever the referendum says. In a plebiscite, government is not bound to follow that. That's the difference. Right? Referendum is like, shall we do this or not? Plebiscite means, what do you think that I should do? Right? So even if the plebiscite, like people say that do this, the government can be like, okay, never mind, we are just going to do this either ways. Okay. That's the difference. All right. 1 second, guys. Right. So referendum means seeking approval. Plebiscite means seeking the opinion. That's the difference. So in a referendum, the public is providing approval. That means that the government is bound. Excuse me. Government is bound to follow what the people's verdict. While plebiscite, well, not really. In plebiscite, of course, you just have to give the opinion and the government is not bound to follow whatever you say. All right. So in that case, plebiscite is considered as a weak direct democracy method, while referendum is considered as the most common and most powerful direct democracy method. All right. Initiative means like people having the power to proceed with the lawmaking power. People having the power to initiate the lawmaking process. Now imagine if a law to be made in the normal government, right? Who has to make the decision? Tell me with your basic knowledge. Who has to make the decision? The executive. Either the president or the prime minister or minister will have to make the decision and draft that decision. Then they send that to the legislature. Once they approve only, it becomes a law, right? So in a normal government, the lawmaking can be initiated only by a member of the executive. Now imagine if there is a law that you have to get passed, As like imagine that, okay, imagine that someone from this class, right? Let's say Hishma has a good idea for a law, right? So what is the process for her to get this passed into a law? She'll have to go talk to a minister, be like, sir, I think you should be passing a law like this. And you have to wait until that minister goes and passes that law, until that minister goes, talks to the other members of the cabinet, drafts that, then puts that to the parliament, get it passed. Until that person does do anything, we can't do anything, right? But that's not how it works if you have initiative in your country, like in Switzerland or some states in the US, right? You have initiative. That means any citizen can draft a law. You don't have to be a member of the executive. Any citizen can draft a law and you can get it signed by people, like how you get a petition signed, right? If you have 25,000 signatures with your drafted law, the legislature is bound to take that into consideration. Understand? The legislature is bound to take that into consideration. Okay? Understand? That's how it works. Initiative. It depends on the country, or the state, the number of signatures, right? Some countries is 50,000, some countries 25,000. But as long as if you have reached the threshold mark, if people have signed your initiative suggestion, the legislature will take that just like it came from the executive. So people can initiate the lawmaking process. And what is recall? Recall is also a little similar. Here also the petition system works. Okay, recall means what now? Imagine that you have a problem with your member of the parliament. Imagine the MP in your area has an attitude and he hasn't been helping you out, right? Don't you get a chance to kick him out? Don't you get a chance to kick his butt? You do. When the next election comes, you can vote him out. So when it comes to ministers, politicians and all that, right? You get a chance to kick them out if they don't behave properly. But what about if you have some beef with your Grama-Niladhari or someone working in a ministry or someone working in a department, a member of the permanent executive? Political executive, yes, you get a chance every 5 years, every 6 years, there's an election, you can kick them out, right? But what about the permanent executive people, government servants? What if they are sort of like giving you attitude and not behaving the proper way? You don't get a chance to vote them out. They are not in contesting elections. They are there for life until they retire. They are going to be in that position. That's when recall comes in. If a certain member has done if a certain public officer is behaving bad, you can write a recall suggestion and get signatures. And once you put it to the legislature, that public officer is considered gone. Public officer can be removed. Just like how a petition works, like, you can send a petition against your Grama-Niladhari, right? So recall works a similar way. What's the difference? Again, very simple. If it is a petition, the person has like, let's say in Sri Lanka, the Public Service Commission, you send a petition to the Public Service Commission against your Grama-Niladhari. It's up to the Public Service Commission to remove him or not, right? Just because you send a petition, they are not bound to remove the person. It's still their decision. But in a recall, no, if you send a recall, they have to remove the person. That's the difference. Okay. In some countries, in some states in the USA, recall can work for judiciary also. If there are judges who are not doing their job properly, you can remove the judges also. You can recall the judges, right? But in some countries, they've released judiciary because it affects independence of judiciary. Then the judges are very scared to give proper decisions because people can recall them. So that only works in some countries in the world, a few countries. Okay. Any questions, guys? Anything you need to clarify? No, right? Okay. So why don't you guys take 10 minutes and utilize this space and write a small note about these four. You have to make a short note about this entire thing. Just explain these four direct democracy methods. Okay. Then there's a small conclusion about direct democracy methods. We'll get to that. Right. And we are moving on to characteristics. Right. Now that we explained what referendums are, what initiatives, what recalls, and what plebiscites are, we know what direct democracy methods are. So I hope that you utilize this space to write a note about those four. So as you can see here, you can see that about direct democracy methods allow citizens of the country to be directly involved in the lawmaking process, which is similar to direct democracy, right? However, compared to representative democracy, direct democracy methods are rarely used. Like obvious, right? It's very difficult to spend money to ask people. It's much less costlier to have a parliamentary meeting and ask the members in the parliament for Gotabaya to come to the parliament and be like, guys, shall I do this? Rather than print ballot papers and have an election. It's the same cost as an election. Okay. So they are rarely used, but they are used sometimes, at least to assure that sometimes people get a direct say in governance. All right. Okay. Then I put a small example of a referendum here. This was the referendum that was held in the UK, right? Should the UK remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union, right? So this referendum where majority of the people voted to leave the European Union, if you remember, in 2015, the UK left the European Union because majority of the people gave that choice, right? As you all know, in a referendum, the government is bound to follow the decision of the people. And since the Prime Minister personally thought that they should remain in the EU, since the referendum said that people believe that they should leave the EU, Prime Minister decided to resign, right? Prime Minister David Cameron resigned because he didn't have to, but he said apparently, I have my views aren't parallel with the people, so I don't feel like staying here anymore, and he resigned. And a small another note, another statistic of like how referendums have been taken place in the recent years, right? Small history. This for your further knowledge, okay? In Denmark, Norway, Ireland, how different referendums have taken place. Okay. Now we can see that except for referendums, what you normally have is representative democracy. That means like voting and electing governments. All right. So when it comes to these, when it comes to an election, there have to be certain factors. It's pointless just having an election. Now you guys know I worked in PAFRL. There's an organization called PAFRL, which is there to assure that elections have transparency. So I worked in the place that which handled the complaints. So I was there handling all the telephones. So one person from Monoragala called and said that he went to vote in the morning. Apparently one of Mahinda Rajapaksha's, that was the election between Mahinda Rajapaksa and Maithripala Sirisena in 2015. I was a final year law faculty student and I went there to volunteer. And some person called and said that he went to vote in the morning, and one of Shashindra Rajapaksha's men, like that's what he said, like some person working for Shashindra Rajapaksha, a thug, right? Shashindra Rajapaksha is Chamal Rajapaksha's son, Mahinda's elder brother's son, right? So this thug had come to the polling center and he had been like, I'm going to stand here. You people put your vote to Mahinda, show me and put it to the ballot box, right? To show that, no one really votes elsewhere. So that means the election had lost transparency. So we received the complaint. So we told the police and police finally removed that person. So that kind of elections are pointless. Okay. So if you are having an election, the election has to have several features, several elements have to be there in that election. Okay. So the note from this point onwards, we'll get someone to read. Rashid, can you read this bit?
Okay, sir. Therefore, it can be seen that the representative democracy is strongly attached with elections. In order to implement successful representative democracy, it is necessary to have a proper election process which allows people to participate in politics. There are several criteria to ensure popular participation and accountability of an election. 1. Meaningfulness. 2. Competitiveness. 3. Freedom. 4. Confidentiality. 5. Fairness. 6. Regular elections for time to time. 7. Inclusivity. 8. Equality. In representative democracy, the decisions are made by representative on behalf of people. These representatives are chosen by the people, public as well. Therefore, representative democracy is a minimalist form of popular sovereignty. However, a principle, the mechanism of one person, one vote is the only form of people's participation in government. Under representative democracy, the only major form of accountability is election. At elections, citizens receive an opportunity as voters to declare their assessments of their representative and their performance.
Right. Okay, Rashid. Thank you. Right. So up from this point onwards, now this is what's going to happen now. Okay. 1 second. For now, we can stop this.